The laughter of the furred Caitian admiral echoed through the void as he observed the puny human fleet before him, unaware that the ancient warships of Earth were already en route and would soon turn the Caitians' mirth into agonized death screams. "Pathetic mammals! Your toy ships are no match for the might of the Caitian armada," Admiral Xander spat, his whiskers twitching with amusement. "Power weapons, and wipe them from the galaxy." Commander Coleman stood tall on the bridge of the Defiant, his face hewn from granite. He watched the Caitian ships charge their guns, knowing that in moments his small fleet would be nothing more than drifting wrecks and frozen corpses. "Sir, we're being hailed by the Caitians," Ensign Rodriguez called out. "They're demanding our immediate surrender." Coleman's lip curled in disgust. "Open a channel." He fixed the view screen with a glare that could melt steel. "Xander, you mangy ball of fluff, I'd rather fly my ship into a black hole than surrender to you." "Then you will die, human," Xander snarled. "You and all your kind, the Caitian Empire, will cleanse the galaxy of your filth." "Not today, Furball." Coleman cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "Battle stations, power up shields, and prepare to return fire. We'll show these kittens what human resolve looks like." The bridge erupted into activity as the crew rushed to their posts. Alarms blared and the deck shuddered as the Caitian ships opened fire, their lasers slamming into the Defiant's shields. Coleman gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles white. He knew his fleet couldn't hold out for long against the Caitian onslaught, but he also knew that help was on the way. The remnants of Earth's once mighty space fleet, hidden away for centuries, were coming. And when they arrived, the Caitians would learn the true meaning of fear. "Hold fast, men!" Coleman shouted over the din of battle. "Earth's ancient warriors are coming, and when they do, the galaxy will tremble at our fury." The Defiant shuddered under the relentless barrage of Caitian fire. Coleman clung to his chair as explosions rocked the ship. The tactical officer shouted damage reports over the chaos. "Shields at 30%. Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Coleman punched commands into his console, diverting power to the forward cannons. "Helm, bring us about, target their flagship, and fire everything we've got." The Defiant swung around, its engines straining. It wove through the enemy formation, dodging lances of searing energy. The human ship unleashed a volley of missiles and laser fire, striking the Caitian dreadnought's shields. The enemy ship's defenses held, and it returned fire with a vengeance. The Defiant's bridge exploded in a shower of sparks and flames. Consoles burst, and crewmen screamed as shrapnel tore through the air. Coleman hauled himself up, blood running down his face. He stared at the view screen in horror as more Caitian ships dropped out of warp, their weapons already blazing. "Sir, we can't take much more of this," the helmsman cried, his hands flying over the controls. Coleman opened his mouth to give the order to retreat, but the words died in his throat as a new voice crackled over the calm. "Commander Coleman, this is Captain Jax of the USS Valiant. Hold tight, we're on our way." Coleman gaped as a massive wormhole yawned open near the battlefield. Out of the swirling vortex emerged a fleet of ships, their hulls emblazoned with the insignia of Earth's legendary space forces. Leading the charge was the Valiant, a battleship of immense size and power. It was flanked by cruisers, destroyers, and carriers, all bristling with weapons. Coleman felt a surge of hope as he watched the ancient warships take up formation around his battered fleet. He stood tall, ignoring the pain of his wounds, and addressed his crew. "Men, our ancestors have come to fight beside us. Let's show these Caitians what humanity is made of." A cheer went up from the Defiant's crew. They rushed to their stations with renewed purpose, their faces set with grim determination. The combined human fleet surged forward, weapons blazing. The Caitians, caught off guard by the sudden reinforcements, faltered in their attack. Admiral Xander slammed his furry fist onto the arm of his command chair, claws unsheathing and digging into the metal. His eyes narrowed, head-tails lashing, as he watched the once-retreating human ships rally and push back against the might of the Caitian armada. "How?" Xander snarled, fangs bared. He whirled to face his tactical officer. "Where did these ships come from? How did our intelligence fail to warn us about this?" The officer, a battle-scarred veteran, could only shake his head at a loss. I don't know, sir. We had no reports, no indications that the humans possessed such advanced warships. Xander hissed, his tail puffing up in anger. He jabbed a clawed finger at the viewscreen, where the newly arrived Earth fleet tore into his ships with devastating precision. I want a full analysis of those vessels now. Find out their capabilities, their weaknesses. And someone get me a line to the rest of the fleet. We need reinforcements. As the bridge crew scrambled to carry out his orders, Xander focused his attention on the massive human battleship at the heart of the enemy formation. The Valiant, as he'd heard it called, was cleaving through his ships like a hot knife through butter. "Target that ship," he growled. "Bring every gun we have to bear. I want it reduced to atoms." Aboard the Defiant, Coleman gripped the arms of his chair as another volley of Cation fire rocked the ship. Sparks cascaded from ruptured conduits, and the acrid smell of burnt circuitry filled the air. "Shields at 15%, someone shouted over the din of battle. "We can't take much more of this." Suddenly the comm crackled to life. "Commander Coleman, this is Captain Jax of the Valiant. We have a plan to take out the Cation flagship, but we need your help." Coleman leaned forward, hope sparking in his chest. "We're with you, Captain. What do you need?" "We're equipped with an experimental railgun, capable of punching through the thickest armor. But to get a clear shot, we need your fleet to draw the Cation ships into a specific formation." Coleman nodded, his face set with grim determination. "Understood, we'll get it done. Just be ready to take that shot when we give you the signal." He turned to his helmsman. "Bring us about. We're going to play a little game of cat and mouse with these furballs." The Defiant peeled away from the main battle, its engines flaring. Coleman opened a channel to the rest of his fleet. "All ships, form up on me. We're going to lead the Cations on a merry chase." The human ships moved as one, executing a series of complex maneuvers designed to lure the enemy into position. Coleman led the charge, his piloting skills put to the ultimate test as he wove through fields of laser fire and searing plasma. The Cations took the bait, their ships breaking formation to pursue the humans. On the bridge of the Valiant, Captain Jax watched the sensor readouts intently. The railgun hummed with power, its barrel glowing a dull red. "Steady," he murmured, his eyes locked on the Cation flagship. "Just a little more." The human ships danced and weaved, drawing the Cations ever closer to the Valiant's line of fire. Coleman gritted his teeth as a near miss sent shudders through the Defiant's hull. "Hold fast," he shouted over the comm. "Just a few more seconds." Aboard the Valiant, Jack saw his moment. The Cation ships were clustered together, their engines flaring as they strained to keep up with the nimble human vessels. "Fire!" he roared. A blinding lance of pure energy erupted from the Valiant's bow, the air around it sizzling and crackling. The beam streaked across the void, closing the distance to the Cation flagship in the blink of an eye. It struck the enemy vessel dead center, the force of the impact sending out a shockwave that rattled the teeth of every human and Cation alike. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent, every eye locked on the stricken Cation ship. Its shields flickered and died, unable to withstand the titanic energies unleashed by the railgun. Explosions blossomed along its hull, great gouts of flame and debris spewing into the void. On the bridge of his crippled flagship, Admiral Xander howled in rage and disbelief as his ship shook itself apart around him. Consoles exploded, bulkheads buckled, and crewmen were sent sprawling. Xander clung to his command chair, his claws gouging deep furrows into the metal. "This isn't over, humans," he snarled, even as the deck beneath his feet tilted and alarms blared. "The Cation Empire will have its revenge. We will—" But his words were cut off as a final cataclysmic explosion tore through the ship. The flagship vanished in a blinding flash of light, reduced to nothing more than a rapidly expanding cloud of molten debris. Aboard the Defiant, Coleman let out a whoop of triumph as he watched the Cation ship disintegrate. His crew erupted into cheers, their voices filling the bridge. Coleman grinned, feeling a surge of pride and relief wash over him. "Well done, everyone," he said, his voice hoarse from shouting. "We've struck a blow for Earth today, one that the Cations won't soon forget." But even as he spoke, Coleman knew that the battle was far from over. The Cation fleet, though diminished, was still a formidable force, and he had no doubt that Admiral Xander's death would only spur them to greater acts of aggression and violence. He looked out at the ancient Earth ships, marveling at their power and resilience. They were a symbol of hope, a reminder that humanity had once been a force to be reckoned with, and with their help, perhaps they could be again. The Valiant's railgun shot streaked across the void, a lance of blinding energy that pierced the heart of the Cation flagship. The beam tore through the ship's shields as if they were paper, ripping into the armored hull beneath. Explosions erupted along the length of the vessel, great gouts of flame and debris spewing into space. On the bridge of the stricken ship, Admiral Xander was thrown from his command chair by the force of the impact. He staggered to his feet, his face contorted with rage and disbelief. Sparks cascaded from shattered consoles, and the acrid stench of burning circuitry filled the air. "Impossible!" Xander roared, his claws gouging deep furrows into the armrests of his chair. Warning klaxons blared, the sound almost drowned out by the groaning of overstressed bulkheads. The Cation crew scrambled to abandon ship, their discipline crumbling in the face of their impending doom. Aboard the Defiant, Coleman watched the destruction of the Cation flagship with grim satisfaction. He seized the moment of chaos, his voice ringing out across the comm channel. "All ships, engage the enemy. Drive them back." The combined human fleet surged forward, their weapons blazing. Lasers and missiles slammed into the Cation lines, exploiting the gaps left by the loss of their flagship. The enemy formation crumbled, their ships scattering like leaves before a hurricane. Cation vessels, their morale shattered, broke and fled, desperate to escape the relentless onslaught of the human forces. The Earth ships pursued, harrying the retreating Cations and picking off stragglers with merciless efficiency. Amidst the fray, a sudden hail cut through the chaos on the Defiant's bridge. Coleman frowned as an unfamiliar face appeared on the view screen. A grizzled, battle-worn human admiral, his uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's ancient space forces. "Commander Coleman, I am Admiral Graves of the Earth Fleet," the man said, his voice gravelly with age and experience. "We've been monitoring your situation and have vital intelligence to share." Coleman leaned forward, his interest piqued. "Go ahead, Admiral." Graves' expression was grim. "The Cations have a secret base on a nearby moon. Our intel suggests they're developing a new weapon there, one capable of obliterating entire planets." A chill ran down Coleman's spine at the Admiral's words. A weapon of such destructive power in the hands of the Cations could spell doom for Earth and her allies. "We must strike now while they're reeling from this defeat," Graves continued. "Assemble a strike team, Commander. You're going to infiltrate that base and destroy the weapon before they can use it against us." Coleman nodded, his jaw set with determination. "Understood, Admiral. We'll get it done." As the transmission ended, Coleman turned to his crew, his mind already racing with plans for the daring mission ahead. He knew the risks, knew that he'd be leading his team into the heart of the enemy stronghold, but with the fate of Earth hanging in the balance, failure was not an option. The Defiant shuddered as it pulled alongside the Valiant, the two ships preparing to receive the strike team. Coleman stood, his gaze sweeping over the bridge one last time before he strode towards the lift, ready to brief his chosen few on the task that lay ahead. The battle against the Cations may have been won, but the war was far from over. And as Coleman stepped into the lift, he knew that the next few hours would be the most critical of his life. The fate of humanity rested on the success of his mission, and he would stop at nothing to ensure that the Cation threat was ended, once and for all. The battle won, but the war far from over, Coleman marched through the corridors of the Defiant, assembling his strike team. He handpicked the best soldiers from both his own crew and the ancient Earth fleet, men and women of unquestionable skill and unwavering loyalty. Among them stood Lieutenant Reese, a young officer with a fiery spirit and a hunger to prove himself. His eyes gleamed with determination as he checked his weapon, eager for the chance to strike a blow against the Cations. Beside him was Sergeant Hawkins, a veteran soldier with a face etched by the scars of countless battles. His gaze held a haunted look, the weight of past losses bearing down on him. Yet he stood tall, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the team geared up, Admiral Graves pulled Coleman aside, his expression grim. "There's one more thing, Commander. We've received intelligence that Admiral Xander survived the destruction of his ship. He's now leading the defense of the Cation base, and will stop at nothing to see that weapon deployed." Coleman's jaw tightened, a cold fury rising within him. Xander had been a thorn in his side for too long, a constant threat to Earth and all he held dear. This time he vowed the Cation Admiral would not escape justice. With a nod to his team, Coleman led them to the hangar bay where a sleek infiltration craft awaited them. They boarded in silence, each lost in their own thoughts as the ship slipped out of the Defiant's hold and into the void of space. The journey to the Cation moon was tense, the air thick with anticipation. Coleman reviewed the mission parameters, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. Failure was not an option. The fate of Earth and countless other worlds hung in the balance. As they approached the moon, the craft's sensors detected the Cation base, a sprawling complex of fortified structures and defense turrets. Coleman's eyes narrowed as he studied the readouts, formulating a plan of attack. "Listen up," he said, his voice cutting through the hum of the engines. "We'll be dropping in hot. Expect heavy resistance from the moment we breach their perimeter. Our objective is to locate and destroy the weapon's core, and if we encounter Admiral Xander—" He paused, his gaze hardening. "We take him down once and for all." The team nodded, their faces set with grim determination. They knew the risks, knew that some of them might not make it back. But they were ready to lay down their lives for the cause, to protect their homes and loved ones from the Cation threat. The infiltration craft shuddered as it entered the moon's atmosphere, streaking towards the base like a silent predator. Coleman gripped his weapon, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment of truth. With a jarring impact, the craft touched down on the outskirts of the base, its ramp lowering to reveal a landscape of twisted metal and scorched earth. Coleman leapt from the ship, his team close behind, and charged towards the Cation defenses. All hell broke loose as the strike team clashed with the base's defenders, laser fire filling the air and explosions rocking the ground. Coleman led the charge, his rifle spitting death as he wove through the chaos, his team fanning out behind him. They fought their way deeper into the base, past shattered barricades and the smouldering remains of Cation soldiers. The air grew thick with the stench of burnt flesh and ozone, the sounds of battle echoing through the corridors. At last they reached the heart of the facility, a vast chamber housing the Cation weapon. Coleman's breath caught in his throat as he beheld the monstrosity before him, a pulsating energy core, its sickly light casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Plant the charges," he barked, his team moving to obey. They worked quickly, attaching explosives to the core's support structures, their hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through their veins. Suddenly a voice rang out, cold and mocking. Well, Commander Coleman, I should have known you'd be leading this futile attempt." Coleman spun, his rifle raised, to see Admiral Xander emerging from the shadows, flanked by a squad of elite Cation guards. The Admiral's eyes gleamed with malice, his once pristine uniform scorched and tattered from the destruction of his ship. "Xander," Coleman growled, his finger tightening on the trigger. "It's over. Surrender now, and I may consider sparing your miserable life." The Cation Admiral laughed, a harsh, grating sound that set Coleman's teeth on edge. "Spare me your empty threats, human. You think you've won? You've merely delayed the inevitable. The Cation Empire will rise again, and your pathetic species will be ground beneath our claws." With a roar of fury, Xander charged, his guards surging forward to meet the strike team head-on. The chamber erupted into a maelstrom of violence, laser fire crisscrossing the air as soldiers on both sides fell, their blood staining the cold metal floor. Coleman found himself locked in a deadly dance with Xander, their blades clashing in a shower of sparks. The Cation Admiral was a formidable opponent, his every blow fueled by a lifetime of hatred and cruelty. From the corner of his eye, Coleman saw Lieutenant Reese break free from the melee, rushing to his commander's aid. The young officer charged towards Xander, his face contorted in a battle cry, only to be cut down by a vicious swipe of the Admiral's blade. Rhys crumpled to the ground, his eyes wide with shock as his life drained away. Coleman let out a howl of anguish and rage, the sight of his fallen comrade igniting a fire within him. With a burst of strength, he beat back Xander's guard and lunged forward, his blade finding the Admiral's heart. Xander staggered back, a look of disbelief on his face, as he clutched at the mortal wound. But even as he fell, the Caitian Admiral's lips twisted in a final malevolent grin. With his last breath, he activated the weapon's self-destruct sequence, the core pulsing with an ominous red light. "Everybody out now," Coleman roared, dragging Hawkins and the rest of the surviving team members towards the exit. They raced through the base, the countdown echoing in their ears, the ground shaking beneath their feet. With mere seconds to spare, they burst from the facility, detonating the explosives as they fled. The base erupted in a massive fireball, the shockwave throwing them to the ground as debris rained down around them. Coleman staggered to his feet, his uniform stained with blood and grime, his heart heavy with the loss of Rhys and the others who had fallen. But as he looked out over the smouldering ruins of the Caitian base, he knew that their sacrifice had not been in vain. They had struck a blow against tyranny, had saved countless lives from the horror of the Caitian weapon, and though the road ahead would be long and fraught with danger, Coleman knew that Earth would endure, would rise from the ashes stronger than ever before. With a heavy heart, he gathered his team and made his way back to the infiltration craft, ready to face whatever challenges the universe had in store. For in the face of evil, there could be no surrender, no retreat. Only the unwavering determination to fight on, to defend the innocent, and to forge a better tomorrow for all. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.